Have you ever found yourself wanting more? More money, more comfort, more recognition, only to feel that nothing is ever enough? This feeling is universal, and it has shaped countless stories across generations. One such story is about a humble fisherman and his wife, a tale that teaches a timeless lesson: the importance of being content with what you have. At first glance, their lives seem ordinary, almost mundane, yet it is precisely this simplicity that sets the stage for a powerful lesson. Through their journey, we will explore the dangers of endless desire and the quiet beauty of appreciating what life already gives us. As we follow the fisherman's adventures and the choices he and his wife make, you'll discover how ambition, greed, and discontent can subtly creep into everyday life, and how understanding contentment can transform not just their world, but perhaps our own. Chapter 1. The Humble Beginning. Once upon a time, in a small coastal village, there lived a fisherman and his wife. Their home was a modest, weathered cottage perched near the edge of the sea. It had only a few rooms, with simple wooden furniture and a small hearth that warmed them during cold nights. The walls were plain, the floors creaked with every step, and the windows often rattled when the wind blew in from the ocean. Yet, despite its simplicity, the cottage was full of life and warmth. The fisherman spent his days casting nets into the sparkling waves, rising before sunrise to greet the quiet morning. He worked steadily, never complaining, content with the modest catch that fed him and his wife. Each day was a rhythm of effort and patience, mending nets, rowing his small boat, and listening to the gentle lapping of the waves. It was hard work, yet it was honest, and it provided just enough for their simple needs. His wife, though she often dreamed of a life slightly larger or more comfortable, found joy in the small pleasures around her. She tended a tiny garden behind the cottage, growing herbs and vegetables, and kept the home tidy and welcoming. She laughed easily at small jokes, helped neighbors when they asked, and found pride in the meals she cooked from what the sea and garden provided. There was a calm satisfaction in this simplicity, a quiet rhythm that filled their lives with meaning. Though their neighbors occasionally spoke of grander homes, finer clothes, or distant cities full of opportunities, the fisherman and his wife remained largely unconcerned. They understood that life was not measured by wealth or possessions, but by the peace and harmony they nurtured in their little home. Evenings were spent together by the fire, sharing stories, dreams, or simply enjoying the sound of the waves beyond their door. The couple's love and cooperation made every meal sweeter, every task lighter, and every day feel complete. Yet, while contentment defined their daily lives, human nature is often restless. Small whispers of desire began to creep into their thoughts, dreams of a larger house, finer clothes, or more comfort during harsh weather. These ideas were fleeting at first, easily brushed aside by the routine of work and the satisfaction of simple pleasures. But they planted a seed, a tiny curiosity about what life might be like if they had just a little more. This peaceful beginning set the stage for everything that would follow: the humble cottage, the honest work, the quiet evenings by the fire. All of it formed the foundation from which contrast would emerge. By showing just how content the couple initially was, the story prepares us to fully understand the consequences of wanting more, and how small shifts in desire can grow into something far greater than one might expect. Their simple life is more than just modesty. It is a mirror for us all, reminding us to appreciate the present before chasing after endless tomorrow's promises. Chapter 2: The Unexpected Catch. Quiet morning, the fisherman set out in his small boat as he did every day. The sea was calm, its surface reflecting the soft hues of dawn. He cast his nets with practiced hands, expecting nothing more than the usual modest catch of fish to sustain him and his wife. But as he pulled the net through the water, a strange movement caught his eye. Among the silver fish flopping in the net was one unlike any he had ever seen. Its scales shimmered with a golden glow, and its eyes held a deep, intelligent sparkle, as if it could understand the world around it. Startled, the fisherman carefully lifted the fish from the net. It opened its mouth and spoke in a gentle yet commanding voice. "Please let me go. In return, I can grant you any wish you desire." The fisherman blinked in disbelief, his heart pounding. He had heard tales of magical creatures in stories, but he had never imagined meeting one in reality. For a moment, he simply stared, unsure of what to do. His mind wandered back to his humble cottage, his small garden, and the modest meals he shared with his wife. "We are poor, yes," he thought, "but we have enough to live, and enough to be happy." He hesitated, torn between the allure of sudden wealth and the peace he already knew. Finally, he spoke gently to the magical fish. "I am grateful for your offer, but we have enough for our needs. Please let me return you to the sea." The fish looked at him with a knowing gaze. "Very well," it said. "But remember, what you refuse today may return in another way tomorrow." With that, it wriggled free from his hands and slipped back into the water, leaving ripples behind as it vanished beneath the waves. When the fisherman returned home, he recounted the encounter to his wife. Her eyes widened with excitement as she imagined the possibilities. "A magical fish that grants wishes," she whispered, her mind racing with visions of a grander home, finer clothes, and perhaps even a life of ease and comfort. The fisherman tried to calm her, reminding her that their life, though simple, was peaceful and enough. Yet, he could see the spark of longing in her eyes, a spark he had never noticed before. That night, as they sat by the hearth, the fisherman's contentment contrasted sharply with his wife's growing desire. He thought about moderation, about the value of appreciating what they already had. She thought about opportunity, imagining the joys and excitement that could come from wealth and power. The air between them was filled with both hope and tension, a silent tug-of-war between simplicity and ambition. The fisherman could not ignore the thought that had crept into his mind. What if a single wish could improve their life without harming anyone? But at the same time, he feared the unknown consequences. The magical fish's words echoed, "What you refuse today may return in another way tomorrow." The choice was his, and with it, the balance between contentment and desire hung in the air, delicate as the morning mist over the sea. This encounter marked the beginning of a journey. It would test their values, challenge their satisfaction, and reveal how easily the human heart could be swayed by the promise of more. In this moment of wonder and uncertainty, the stage was set for the first wish, the first step away from simplicity, and the first hint of the trials that lay ahead. Chapter 3: The First Wish. The very next day, the fisherman could not shake the memory of the magical fish. Its golden scales and wise eyes haunted him, and he noticed his wife's excitement growing with every passing hour. She spoke of all the possibilities, a larger house, new clothes, a life of ease. At first, the fisherman reminded her gently that their life was already enough, that peace and contentment were worth more than any treasure. But her longing grew, and he realized that she would not rest until some change was made. Finally, he returned to the sea, the small boat bobbing on the gentle waves. He called out to the magical fish, repeating the words of introduction he had learned from the day before. The fish appeared instantly, glimmering in the morning light, and gazed at him with the same intelligent eyes. The fisherman swallowed his hesitation and spoke, "My wife wishes for a larger house, something more comfortable than our small cottage. Please grant her wish." The fish nodded silently and disappeared beneath the water. When the fisherman returned home, he was astonished to see their humble cottage transformed into a larger, brighter house. The walls were sturdy and painted in warm colors, the rooms spacious, and the furnishings far more comfortable than before. His wife's eyes sparkled with delight as she walked through each room, imagining all the possibilities that came with this newfound luxury. For a while, they basked in the joy of the first wish fulfilled. Meals were easier to prepare in the larger kitchen, and there was space to entertain neighbors or rest after a long day. Yet, beneath the happiness, something subtle began to shift. The fisherman noticed the first flicker of dissatisfaction. His wife's smile was bright, but her eyes already darted toward things she did not yet have: finer clothes, more servants, even wealth to impress others in the village. At first, these thoughts seemed harmless. After all, everyone wants small improvements in life. But the fisherman sensed the seed of desire, a tiny urge that could grow into something larger and more consuming. He saw how easily contentment could be replaced with longing, how joy in what they had could be overshadowed by imagining what they could gain. The contrast between their simple happiness before and the sparkling new house now made the shift in mindset all the more apparent. Evening fell, and the couple sat by the fire in their new home. The warmth felt different, somehow richer, yet the fisherman's heart was heavy with a quiet worry. He wondered if they would ever stop wanting, if this first wish was only the beginning of a chain of desires that could never be satisfied. His wife, however, could not contain her excitement and whispered about what might come next. She dreamed aloud, imagining that if one wish could grant so much, another could make their life perfect. The first wish had opened a door to dreams, to ambition, and to a subtle form of greed. What had begun as a simple improvement was already planting ideas that would test their patience, their values, and the balance between contentment and desire. The fisherman understood, perhaps better than his wife, that happiness was not just about what you have, but how you feel about it. Yet, for now, he said nothing, allowing her to revel in the joy of the new house, while quietly bracing himself for the choices that might come next. Chapter 4. Escalating Desires. At first, the larger house seemed enough. The fisherman's wife walked through each room with wonder, delighted by the change. But soon, the sparkle of curiosity transformed into longing, a hunger for more that no walls or furnishings could satisfy. She began to dream not just of comfort, but of wealth, influence, and admiration. The modest joys of their former life seemed small, even dull, compared to the exciting possibilities her imagination now conjured. "I wish we had fine clothes," she said one morning, smoothing her hands over the polished wooden table, and perhaps a garden full of flowers from distant lands, something that will make our neighbors look with envy. The fisherman, though he loved her dearly, felt unease. He hesitated, recalling the peaceful days when a simple meal by the fire had been enough to bring joy. Yet, out of love and a desire to see her happy, he returned to the sea and summoned the magical fish. With a gentle nod, the fish granted the wish. When he returned home, the house gleamed even brighter, adorned with luxurious fabrics and exotic flowers. His wife's eyes sparkled, but the spark of discontent lingered as well. Soon she spoke of servants to attend to their every need, a chest full of gold coins and ornaments to display their rising status. Each wish brought immediate pleasure, yet it also deepened the gap between what they had and what they wanted. The fisherman noticed the subtle changes. His wife, once content with simple meals and quiet evenings, now sought grandeur and recognition. She compared herself to others in the village, imagining how her life could shine above theirs. The warmth of their relationship began to shift. She was never cruel, but impatience and frustration crept in when wishes were delayed or when her desires were unmet. The fisherman tried to remind her of the peace they once enjoyed, but his words fell on ears already filled with visions of more. As the days passed, the couple's life became a series of escalating demands. Each wish, though granted instantly by the magical fish, seemed insufficient. The fisherman began to feel a quiet heaviness, a sense that happiness was slipping further away the more they acquired. His simple heart could not reconcile the speed of their changing fortunes with the slow, steady rhythm of their former contentment. He remembered the calm mornings before the wishes began, the quiet joy of fishing, and the laughter they shared without wealth or grandeur. The wife's desires now moved beyond material comfort. She spoke of land, titles, and influence among the people of the village. The fisherman grew anxious, seeing how her imagination stretched beyond the bounds of necessity. "Why stop here?" she would ask, her voice tinged with excitement and restlessness. "If a magical fish can grant us a house and gold, why not a manor, a palace, or even a kingdom?" He remained silent, fearing both the consequences and the anger that might follow if he opposed her. Tension began to shadow their relationship. Meals, once shared with laughter and warmth, were now filled with hurried planning and restless conversation. The wife's joy was immediate but fleeting. The fisherman's peace was disturbed. He realized the subtle trap of unchecked desire. What begins as harmless dreaming can grow into a consuming hunger, leaving gratitude and contentment far behind. Through this growing discontent, the story teaches a simple but powerful lesson. Greed does not merely affect wealth. It affects relationships, peace of mind, and the very rhythm of daily life. The fisherman, though kind and patient, could feel the emotional cost mounting as love was weighed against desire and simplicity was overshadowed by ambition. What had started as a single harmless wish now threatened the harmony that had once defined their lives. By the time the wife's desires began to reach for status and power, it was clear that moderation had been replaced with an insatiable appetite. The magical fish could grant anything, yet it could not grant wisdom or temper human longing. This section of the story shows the dangers of greed in vivid contrast, the quiet satisfaction of the past versus the restless hunger of the present. It serves as a warning. illustrating how easily small wishes can grow into a chain of unending ambition, reshaping not only life circumstances, but the human heart itself. Chapter 5. The Turning Point. One evening, after yet another wish had been granted, the wife gazed out the window at the setting sun and sighed. "A palace would suit us better," she murmured. "We deserve to be admired, to have power, to be above everyone else in the village. Perhaps even a crown. Imagine being a queen." The fisherman's heart sank at her words. He had hoped the first wishes would satisfy her, that she would find joy and comfort rather than dominance. Now he feared they had crossed a line. He thought of the magical fish who had granted their previous wishes without complaint. It had obeyed, yet the fisherman knew it was no ordinary creature. There was wisdom in its eyes, a knowing that perhaps humans rarely appreciated what they had. The fisherman felt torn between love for his wife and the growing unease in his own heart. How far should he go to grant her desires? When does generosity turn into danger? As he approached the sea the next morning, the wind whispered against the shore, carrying a sense of tension that had never existed before. The waves shimmered, as if the fish was already aware of the magnitude of this next request. The fisherman hesitated, staring at the water. Should he summon the fish for such an extraordinary wish, or should he try to remind his wife of the peace and contentment they once knew? Back at home, his wife's excitement had grown into expectation. She did not merely want a better life. She wanted to be admired, envied, and powerful. Her imagination had stretched to the point where simple comfort was no longer enough. The fisherman recognized the shift. Desire had become ambition. Ambition had become obsession. And the quiet life they once cherished now seemed inadequate in her eyes. This moment marked a turning point. The simple wishes for comfort and small luxuries had escalated into a demand for power. The fisherman felt a weight in his chest, a conflict between love, duty, and conscience. He realized that the magical fish's power was unlimited, but human longing was not. The more they wished, the further they drifted from the life that had once brought them happiness. He wondered, if they continued, what would they lose? Would the fish grow angry? Would they return to the same modest life, or perhaps lose even that? The unknown consequences loomed large, a shadow over the promise of fulfillment. For the first time, fear mingled with desire in their home, creating tension and uncertainty. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the fisherman understood the lesson in stark clarity. Human desire has no natural limit, and even magic cannot replace wisdom. The story was no longer just about a fish granting wishes. It had become a mirror reflecting the danger of never appreciating what one already possesses. The turning point was here. The wife's ambition had reached its peak, and the fisherman's inner struggle revealed the profound contrast between contentment and unbridled desire. The stage was set for the consequences to follow. The couple had crossed the line between moderation and obsession, and now the story would show the price of insatiable longing. The fisherman's simple heart and his wife's restless ambition stood on opposite sides, and the balance of their lives, once steady and peaceful, trembled under the weight of one final, fateful wish. Chapter 6. The Consequences. After the wife's most extravagant wish to become a queen was spoken, the sea became quiet, almost ominously still. The fisherman approached the shore with a heavy heart, knowing the magical fish awaited his command. When he called out, the water shimmered and the fish surfaced, its golden scales duller than before, its eyes reflecting a mix of sadness and frustration. "You have asked for too much," the fish said softly. "There is a limit to desire, even when it seems unlimited." The fisherman explained his wife's wish, his voice trembling slightly. The fish shook its head. "This cannot be granted," it said. "You have learned little from what you already had." With a sudden motion, the fish disappeared beneath the waves, leaving ripples that slowly faded. The next morning, the fisherman returned home, fearing the consequences. To his shock, the grand palace and all the luxuries vanished. Their home, their garden, and even their simple furniture had returned to the modest cottage where they had begun. The wife stared in disbelief, her face pale with anger and sorrow. She realized that all the wealth, power, and admiration she had wished for were fleeting, illusions that could vanish as quickly as they had appeared. The fisherman, though saddened by the loss of the comforts they had briefly enjoyed, felt a quiet relief. Peace returned to the cottage, and the rhythm of their simple life reappeared. Yet the lesson was unmistakable. Greed had led to loss. Every wish had taken a piece of their satisfaction, leaving them restless, frustrated, and ultimately empty. The magical fish had not punished them cruelly. It had simply restored the balance that had been disrupted by unbridled desire. This moment marked the power of contrast vividly. The fleeting joy of sudden wealth and grandeur stood against the lasting value of contentment. The cottage, small and plain, now seemed precious. Meals cooked over the modest hearth, walks along the shore, and laughter shared by the fire became treasures of immeasurable worth. The wife understood that chasing endless desires had blinded her to these simple joys. Through this experience, the story makes tangible the consequences of greed. The magical fish's withdrawal of gifts mirrors real-life situations where constant striving for more leads to unhappiness rather than fulfillment. Wealth, status, and power may provide temporary pleasure, but without gratitude and moderation, they fail to sustain the human heart. The fisherman and his wife learned this the hard way, their contentment shattered by their own unchecked ambitions. By contrasting the brief allure of extravagance with the enduring peace of simplicity, the tale reminds us of a universal truth. Life's most meaningful treasures often lie not in what we gain, but in what we already have. The cottage, humble as it was, returned to its role as a haven of love, patience, and shared moments. A stark reminder that happiness is rooted in appreciation rather than accumulation. Chapter 7. Reflection and Regret. In the days following the return to their modest home, silence hung heavily over the cottage. The fisherman and his wife moved through familiar routines, yet everything felt different. The wife sat by the hearth, her eyes reflecting a mixture of regret and sorrow. She replayed each wish in her mind, realizing how quickly desire had clouded her judgment. She had sought more than comfort. She had sought admiration, power, and control, and in doing so, she had forgotten the simple joys that once defined her life. The fisherman, too, reflected on their journey. Though he had been cautious and often hesitant, he had yielded to his wife's persistent wishes. He wondered whether he could have acted differently, whether a firm refusal earlier might have prevented the turmoil. The cottage, once a symbol of peace, now felt like a mirror reflecting human weakness and the consequences of failing to appreciate what one already has. Together they talked quietly, sharing their thoughts and regrets. The wife admitted her error, acknowledging that her ambition had been blind and selfish. She recognized that love, companionship, and gratitude were far more valuable than fleeting wealth or status. The fisherman, in turn, expressed relief that they had returned to simplicity, but also sorrow that the lessons had come at such a cost. The contrast between their modest beginnings and the chaos of unchecked desires became painfully clear. What had started as small wishes, a larger house, better clothes, had escalated into demands for influence and power. Each step away from contentment had brought temporary pleasure, but also restlessness, tension, and ultimately disappointment. Their hearts, once aligned in simple happiness, had been strained by ambition. This reflection allowed both to understand an essential truth. Contentment cannot be replaced by material gain. Even magic, which could provide instant wealth and power, could not teach wisdom or inner peace. Regret, while heavy, became a teacher. They realized that happiness depends not on having more, but on valuing what is already present. Their journey had been painful, yet it offered insight that would guide them for the rest of their lives. Chapter 8. The Lesson. From the story of the fisherman and his wife emerges a clear and timeless lesson. Be content with what you have. Life is filled with opportunities to wish for more, to strive for greater comfort, status, or recognition. Yet chasing endless desires often leads to disappointment and unrest. True happiness comes not from accumulation, but from gratitude and moderation. The tale shows how small increments of greed can grow quickly. What begins as a simple wish for comfort can escalate into a pursuit of wealth, influence, or power. The magical fish in the story represents opportunity. It can provide abundance, but it cannot instill wisdom. The human heart, left unchecked, tends to desire more, and in doing so, loses appreciation for what is already valuable. This story is not just about fairy tale magic. It mirrors real life. Many people spend their lives striving for promotions, possessions, or recognition, believing these will bring lasting happiness. Yet without gratitude and mindfulness, these achievements often feel hollow. By learning to be content, by appreciating the small joys and blessings we already have, we build a foundation for enduring peace and fulfillment. The fisherman and his wife teach us that moderation and mindfulness are essential. Each wish they made seemed harmless at first, yet each step away from contentment brought tension, disappointment, and emotional strain. Recognizing limits, savoring what we have, and finding joy in everyday simplicity ensures that happiness is not fleeting, but enduring. In the end, the fisherman and his wife returned to their small cottage, hearts humbled and minds enlightened. They had experienced the thrill of sudden wealth and power, only to discover that these could never replace the quiet joy of contentment. Their journey reminds us that happiness is not found in excess, but in gratitude, moderation, and the appreciation of what we already possess. We live in a world filled with temptations and comparisons. It is easy to look at others and feel that our lives are lacking, or to believe that more wealth or recognition will bring fulfillment. Yet the story of the fisherman and his wife shows that the pursuit of endless desires can cloud our judgment, strain our relationships, and obscure the simple pleasures that make life meaningful. Take a moment to reflect on your own life. What do you truly need to feel happy and fulfilled? Often the answer is far simpler than we imagine. a warm home, nourishing food, loving relationships, and the freedom to enjoy small, everyday moments. Contentment does not mean giving up ambition, but rather balancing desire with appreciation for what already exists. By embracing gratitude, moderation, and mindfulness, we can prevent the pitfalls of endless striving. Like the fisherman, we can learn to cherish the ordinary, finding richness not in possessions or status, but in shared moments, personal growth, and the quiet peace of knowing that enough is already present. As the sun sets over the fisherman's modest cottage, we are reminded of the timeless truth. Happiness is not in having more, but in being grateful for what we have. Let this story inspire reflection and action. Value today, appreciate what you have, and find joy in simplicity. The journey to contentment begins with a choice, to see the beauty of life as it is, not only as we wish it to be.